As the barges came closer to the shore, appreciable amounts of mustard vapor could be detected, and all respirators and hoods were adjusted. On landing, the men proceeded to their respective positions and turned off the injectors which had been turned on before the bombing. The majority of the positions were so placed that they were not readily accessible, and the passage along the loose coral beach to the points on the more distant parts of the sampling circle, the northwest coast, imposed a considerable strain on the sampling team. Such a strain was partly due to the inconvenience of wearing two-layer impregnated clothing under tropical conditions, but more to the difficulty in traversing rough and steep slopes in respirators. In addition, a constant lookout had to be kept for contaminated foliage as the men passed along the trails. Many yards of these trails were heavily contaminated, and the adjacent foliage literally dripping with the charging. Many of the sampling personnel passing such areas came into accidental contact with these branches, but as all were examined by officers at intervals and precautions taken, only insignificant burns were sustained. Throughout the trial and for the succeeding week, when a party searched the jungle for bombs, plotting their positions, the precautions were not relaxed. In addition to the sampling, which was carried out on the open site, samples were also taken from the defensive positions, and here one member of the team is seen turning on an injector for his second sample. The crates which carried the bead bubblers were clearly labelled with the position and time at which the sample was taken. Two teams were used for the sampling, the first team operating for the first 2 hours after the bombing, when 4 samples were taken from every position. In the center of the circle, Captain Skipper sampled the vapor for several hours with the Northrop titrimeter. The CTs obtained along this beach were in general low, but CTs of 1860 and 370 were recorded at these positions as both were adjacent to bombs. The results on this beach were rather better, several CTs being above 1,000. The target area comprised the northwestern 2/3 of the island, ending at the constriction. A meteorology station was established on the spit where an observer made frequent determinations of weather conditions, wind speed and direction. Ground surface temperature, air temperature and humidity. The bulk of the activities of the meteorology section, however, were confined to observations made in the jungle at a series of pre-selected points on the sampling layer. On the day of the bombing, the dominant meteorological feature was the moderate to fresh southeasterly breeze, which persisted until late in the evening. Cloud cover varied, but considerable periods of continuous and intermittent sunshine were experienced. There was no rainfall. Members of the meteorology section passed along the trails and, arriving at a position, proceeded to set up the anemometer. The wind speeds recorded in the jungle varied from 2 to 6 feet per second, depending on the exposures of the selected sites. Thus, the wind speeds on the jungle sites varied from 0.1 to 0.3 of the unobstructed wind speed. The difference in wind speeds in the open and jungle can be appreciated by comparing the anemometer speeds. The CTs around the circular layout varied from 240 to 47,700, the lowest CT being recorded at this position and the highest here, where a direct hit was recorded. CTs in the defensive positions, with 2 exceptions, ranged from 970 to 15,000. The goat at this position, where a CT of 20,900 was recorded, was heavily contaminated with liquid mustard from a bomb. The bomb casing can be seen at the other side of the foxhole. When this photograph was taken, 20 minutes following the bombing, the goat seemed a little restive, and as the day passed, the animal became progressively worse and died during the night. When taken out to the beach on the following day, some of the goats were found to be severely injured. This one has both eyes completely blinded and its respiratory tract badly damaged. At the end of the sampling period, the samplers returned along the beach and gathered at the spit, where they rested until taken off by the barges. The pace at which they're walking gives some indication of the exhaustion caused by the heavy clothing and respirators under tropical conditions. Even here, during the rest period, it was impossible for the personnel to remove any part of their protective equipment because of the high concentrations of mustard vapor which were being blown across the coral. Later, personnel returned to Hinchinbrook with the sample.